November 20th, 1943, 0900 hours, Betio Island, Tarawa Atoll. Lieutenant Alexander Bonnyman Jr. crouches behind a shattered palm stump, watching Marines die on a beach barely 75 yards wide. Machine gun fire from reinforced concrete pillboxes cuts through the morning air at 550 rounds per minute. Bodies float in the lagoon. Landing craft burn in the surf. The reef that was supposed to be covered by high tide sits exposed, trapping Higgins boats 500 yards offshore. 27 years old, mining engineer from New Mexico, Bonnyman had joined the Marines to fight. He hadn't expected to become a tank designer, but war demands improvisation, and right now the 2nd Marine Division needs something that can move forward when men cannot. Something that can absorb the punishment of Japanese Type 92 heavy machine guns and keep pushing. Something that doesn't exist in any military manual. They need a bulldozer that won't die. The idea started 3 weeks earlier aboard the USS Ashland. Navy Seabees, the construction battalions, had brought their equipment for post-battle airfield construction, standard Caterpillar D8 dozers, 18 tons each, 130 horsepower diesel engines, built to move earth, not fight wars. Chief Petty Officer Charles Haynes had looked at those machines and seen possibility. The dozers would be needed immediately after the assault to clear beach obstacles and crater-damaged runways. But to get to those tasks, they'd first have to survive the most heavily defended beach in the Pacific. Haynes sketched his concept on notebook paper. Take a dozer, weld steel plating around the operator's position, armor the engine compartment, create vision slits for the driver, transform a construction vehicle into something resembling a tank. The naval architects thought he was insane. Steel plating would add weight. The dozers weren't designed for combat loads. The armor might cause mechanical failure, transmission breakdown, engine overheating. Haynes didn't care about theory, he cared about keeping his men alive. The modification work happened at Pearl Harbor in early November. CB metalworkers cut 3/8-inch steel plate into panels. They welded frames around the operator's cage. They fashioned sloped armor for the engine housing, angled to deflect small arms fire. Vision slits measured 3 inches wide, 2 inches tall, enough to see, narrow enough to stop bullets. The blade received reinforcement plating. The track stayed exposed. There was no good way to armor them without interfering with movement. Total weight increase, roughly 2 tons per machine. 4 dozers received the treatment. Field modification, unauthorized, unapproved. The kind of battlefield innovation that either wins medals or courts-martial. If you want to see how this homemade tank changed the entire battle, please hit that like button. It helps us share more forgotten stories. Subscribe if you haven't already. Back to Betio. The landing began at 0544 hours on November 20th. Naval bombardment had pounded the island for hours. 14-inch shells from battleships, 5-inch naval guns, carrier aircraft dropping 1,000-pound bombs. The strategists believed nothing could survive that hell. They were catastrophically wrong. The Japanese had spent a year fortifying Tarawa. Admiral Keiji Shibasaki commanded 4,836 troops. They'd built 500 pillboxes and bunkers from reinforced concrete mixed with coral and sand. Coconut logs, 3 feet in diameter, topped with steel rails scavenged from the narrow-gauge railroad. Command bunkers buried under 8 feet of sand and concrete. Beach obstacles made from coconut logs and barbed wire. Tank traps 4 feet deep. The bombardment had killed some defenders and destroyed some positions, but the core defensive network remained intact. Worse, the tide calculations were wrong. The reef didn't submerge. Landing craft grounded 500 yards out. Marines had to wade through chest-deep water under direct fire. Machine guns and rifles found them immediately. Some units took 50% casualties before reaching the beach. Those who made it found themselves pinned against a seawall 3 feet high, unable to advance, unable to retreat, taking casualties from Japanese positions that had interlocking fields of fire. The first dozer hit the beach at 1100 hours. CB operator George Schneller drove it straight off an LST ramp. Bullets struck the armor within seconds. The distinctive crack of 7.7mm rifle rounds on steel. Heavier impacts from the Type 92s. Schneller kept moving. The visibility through those 3-inch slits was terrible. He could barely see 10 feet ahead, but he could see the seawall and he could see Marines huddled behind it, and he understood his job. He dropped the blade and started pushing. Coral sand, shattered coconut palms, destroyed equipment. He carved a path through the beach obstacles, creating an opening wide enough for men to advance through. Machine gun fire hammered the armor continuously. Rounds sparked off the steel. Some penetrated where welds weren't perfect. Schneller ignored them. He pushed forward another 20 yards, then another, the dozer engine screaming, transmission grinding, the whole machine shaking from impacts. A Japanese Type 97 Chiha tank appeared from behind a pillbox. Its 57mm gun traversed toward the dozer. Schneller saw it through the slit. No time to react, the tank fired. The shell hit the dozer blade at an angle and deflected upward, missing the operator cage by inches. The blade sustained a massive dent but held. Schneller reversed, repositioned, then charged forward again, using the blade like a battering ram against the pillbox wall. The concrete cracked. Not enough to breach, but enough to demonstrate that the dozers could engage fortifications directly. By midday, 3 of the 4 armored dozers were operational on the beach. The 4th had thrown a track and sat immobilized, still drawing fire, but unable to move. The working machines became mobile cover. Marines advanced behind them, using the dozers as shields. The machines pushed disabled Amtraks off the beach, cleared paths through wire obstacles, filled in tank traps with coral sand, and began the work of dismantling the Japanese defensive network piece by piece. The dozers did something else, something harder to quantify. They gave Marines hope. For 6 hours, men had been dying on that beach with nothing to show for it. No progress, no breakthrough, just blood and seawater and concrete that wouldn't break. Then these improvised tanks arrived, shrugging off fire that killed men, pushing forward when advance seemed impossible. Psychological warfare runs both directions. The dozers told Marines they could win. They told the Japanese that American industrial ingenuity could turn construction equipment into weapons of war. November 21st, second day. The dozers worked continuously. They'd push rubble from destroyed bunkers, create firing positions, flatten ground for artillery placement. One machine spent 4 hours filling a massive crater left by a naval shell, creating a supply route from the beach to the interior. Another dozer, driven by CB Vern Garrett, attacked a particularly stubborn bunker complex. The concrete was too thick for the blade to penetrate. Garrett improvised. He used the blade to pile sand and debris against the bunker's firing slits, blinding the defenders. Marines then approached from the sides with flamethrowers and demolition charges. The machines took punishment that would have destroyed lesser equipment. Bullet strikes numbered in the hundreds per dozer. The armor showed impact craters, penetrations, stress fractures. One machine took a direct hit from a mortar that destroyed the exhaust system but left the engine running. Operators worked in conditions that approached unbearable. Interior temperatures exceeded 120 degrees. Visibility remained minimal. The constant vibration from impacts caused injuries, broken fingers from gripping controls too tightly, cracked ribs from being thrown against the armor when shells struck nearby. By November 23rd, 76 hours after the initial landing, Tarawa was secured. The cost was devastating. 1,009 Marines killed, 2,101 wounded. The entire Japanese garrison fought to the death, only 17 prisoners taken from nearly 5,000 defenders. The 3-day battle produced casualty rates higher than D-Day would see 7 months later. Every yard of Betio had been paid for in blood. But without those armored dozers, the cost would have been higher still. Post-battle analysis credited the machines with reducing casualties by an estimated 200 men. Lives saved because Marines could advance behind mobile armor instead of crossing open ground. The dozers cleared obstacles that would have taken days to remove by hand. They neutralized fortifications faster than infantry alone could manage. They proved that battlefield modification, field innovation, and improvisation could match or exceed the effectiveness of purpose-built military equipment. The Navy officially recognized the armored dozer concept in early 1944. Engineering teams studied Haynes's design. They refined it, improved the armor layout, added better visibility systems, enhanced engine cooling. By mid-1944, factory-built armored dozers were entering production. They participated in every subsequent Pacific landing: Kwajalein, Saipan, Guam, Peleliu, Iwo Jima, Okinawa. The design influenced post-war military engineering vehicles. Modern combat earthmovers trace their lineage directly back to those four machines welded together in a Pearl Harbor maintenance bay. Charles Haynes received a commendation for his initiative, but no medal. The Navy didn't like to officially acknowledge unauthorized modifications, even successful ones. He returned to civilian life after the war, worked construction in California, rarely spoke about Tarawa. George Schneller survived the battle, drove dozers in 3 more island assaults, went home to Michigan in 1945. The machines themselves were scrapped after the war. No museum preserved them. No memorial marks their existence. They were tools that did a job, nothing more. But in the history of armored warfare, they occupy a unique position. Not tanks, not armored personnel carriers. Something in between. Proof that innovation doesn't require research labs or design committees. Sometimes it just requires a welder, some steel plate, and the understanding that survival depends on thinking differently. Tarawa taught brutal lessons about amphibious warfare. The reef problem led to the development of Amtraks that could cross coral. The bunker fortifications led to improved flamethrower tactics and shaped charge explosives. The communication failures led to better radio systems. Every aspect of the battle informed future operations. But among all those lessons, the armored dozer stands out as pure improvisation, a mining engineer's solution to an immediate problem executed with whatever materials were available, refined under fire, and ultimately adopted as standard equipment. 76 hours. 3 days, 1 tiny island barely 2 miles long, and 4 homemade tanks that prove battlefield genius often comes from the people holding the wrenches, not the ones drawing the blueprints. If this story moved you, please like and subscribe. Your support helps us preserve these histories. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from.